With over 50 years of posthumous releases, once again we are treated with a surprise new book from J.R.R. Tolkien. The Bovadium Fragments is a mostly forgotten, short, rather unconventional story told from a perspective of future archeologists examining the phenomenon of motor vehicles. It's essentially a satire which, through the lens of humor and linguistic jest, expresses Tolkien's obvious disdain for incessant industrial innovation. The book starts with an introduction by Christopher Tolkien, who started editing it before his death in 2020, concisely explaining the background of the story, the relevant biographical and historical details, and the inspiration for writing it, which came from a poem by A.D. Godley titled The Motor Bus. The poem, as is the case in the Bovadium Fragments, plays quite a bit with Latin grammar, while poking fun at this new terrifying wonder of engineering. The introduction is followed by a foreword to the fragments written by two researchers from the future, mostly setting the stage for the text that follows by providing a couple of riddles. They are speculating about the language of the past and the people inhabiting the land, leaving it to us to guess what exactly they are talking about, which proves to be a fun exercise. It's a reminder of the many holes in history we tend to fill with our own presumptions, and I believe it's also a dig at the academics and their sometimes undeserved confidence. After this, we finally get to the three fragments. Filled with Latin playfulness throughout, they describe the city of Bovadium, or Oxford as we know it, slowly falling into ruin through the invasion of the so-called motores, described as some sort of machine monsters with volition and sinister purpose, and the complete surrender of people to their rule, going so far as to worship them and change the shape of their city and their lives to please this abominable creation. The text is wonderfully written and, although I did not expect this, at times genuinely funny. And I have to admit, as someone who shares Tolkien's sentiment when it comes to technology, reading it felt quite satisfying and almost cathartic. Although skepticism towards technological progress is a recurring topic throughout Tolkien's work and letters, most notably seen in his portrayal of industrialized Isengard in The Lord of the Rings, this motif may have been most fervently expressed in the Bovadium Fragments. There's the loss of meaning in our constant struggle for advancement and the promise of a better future, while we can plainly see, although some would disagree, that reality so often turns out to be the opposite of that promise. Not to mention the myriad of other more serious new problems, both material and spiritual, that arise in the process, or existing ones being made even worse. Although the particular issue of the motor industry was evidently quite near to Tolkien and laid heavily on his heart, I could easily see this book being written about any of the technological leaps throughout history, accelerated since the Industrial Revolution, and even as I speak we seem to be on the brink of another abyss, this time into the depths of so-called artificial intelligence. I sure would love to hear what Tolkien might have to say about that. The fragments themselves constitute maybe around 50 pages, while the rest of the book is made up of text describing the context behind writing the story. Another 50 or so pages were written by Richard Ovenden in the lengthy supplement titled The Origin of Bovadium. It deals with Tolkien's life in Oxford and the city itself, history of its motor industry, and all the details relevant for this story. This segment is filled with photographs of Oxford from Tolkien's time, although I find them too small, as is the case with all of the illustrations in this book. What the pictures lack in size, however, they make up in numbers. There's quite a lot, ranging from Tolkien's watercolor paintings and drawings to photographs and city plans from the era. Tolkien's illustrations come from various sources not intended for this particular text. Some of them are depicting the nature around Oxford and the city itself, and some are a bit more on the abstract side, showing off the diversity of Tolkien's artistic expression and curiosity. The book has sewn binding and it includes a silk ribbon bookmark. The text has some green accents and is quite large, I assume in order to fill more pages and make the book seem a bit more substantial. When it comes to design and build quality, while I'm generally not a huge fan of this series of HarperCollins trade hardcovers, I don't want to complain too much, since this is probably the best we could have hoped for. And people generally like them, so feel free to disregard my grumpy remarks. Well, that would be all for now. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.